So welcome everyone to this presentation. The idea behind it is to give you some feedbacks that I have from building a few Flutter applications with the perspective of my background, which is on Android development. So this is me. This is my face. This is also my face. And I work at SFEIR. SFEIR is a freight agency. I'm based in France, but right now I'm in Brazil. And I work with mobile developments and also voice applications. So if you have any questions around Flutter development or general mobile development or even voice applications with the Google Assistant and such, please book an office hour, or you can contact me on Twitter, email, whatever you want. I'm really happy to help you with whatever issue you have. So before giving the feedbacks, I would like to start by giving you a brief overview of the platform, of what it is, and I'm going to give you two characteristics, which for me are the main characteristics of the Flutter framework. The first one is the target platforms. When we think about Flutter, in general, we think about mobile. And it's because the most stable version is for Android, for iOS, for mobile. But the vision behind Flutter is not only for mobile, it is for every screen that you can have, be it on the web, desktop, on IoT, on really anything. So keep in mind that, of course, we can build production applications for mobile today, but the vision in the long term is to be able to use it everywhere. And I have put on the right there this project by Google, which is called Fuchsia OS. I'm sorry, I'm just going to mute my backup. Okay, this is way much better for me. No, I can still hear it. Can you still hear me? Yes, perfect. And yes, I was talking about Fuchsia OS, and this is this new operating system being developed by Google. We don't know much what it's going to be. We know it's under development, it's open source. We have some rumors that it's going to replace this, it is going to work for that. But one thing that we know for sure is that Flutter is going to be a privileged framework, UI framework to build applications for Fuchsia. So keep that in mind too. The other main characteristic that I wanted to show you is that in order to build for all these kind of platforms, Flutter relies on a really special rendering engine and rendering strategy. So what do I mean by that? When Google built Flutter, they did not rely on anything that is proposed by the OEM, by the manufacturer of Android or for iOS. So when you're displaying a button, when you're displaying a text or anything that is on the screen, it is not using the Android button, it's not using the iOS button, it's not using WebView, any kind of bridge. Everything is managed by the Flutter framework, and it's every pixel that is rendered on the screen is controlled by the framework. And this is why it can be so powerful and so optimized to the platform, to the hardware. Sorry. And also the rendering engine itself. It is based on SKIA. SKIA is the rendering engine that runs on Chrome, the Chrome web browser. So with these two characteristics that I just wanted to give you a really quick overview, let's go to the takeaways that I have had from building and publishing a Flutter app that I have, several Flutter apps actually, that I have published to production. So the first one that I have, it's about internationalization and localization overall. So here on the screen, you have some GitHub issues about that problem. Coming from Android, yes, there are a lot of strategies of managing this on Android projects, but you and I both know, everyone here in this room knows, that there is a very robust way, a default way of dealing with that is by doing the resources folders by language, and it works very, very well. So such system doesn't exist in Flutter by default. And even you have to actually write code to detect the current locale of your user, which for me it's kind of, I don't know, useless. I really wanted to, by default, to show the strings or the text that is built for the user locale. So you can see here I have highlighted here, do the locale resolution in the embedders itself, in the framework itself, so it can resolve for me and I can use it. And a bunch of other tickets too, in order to make it better. I'm not saying that it is impossible. I'm not saying that it is difficult. I'm just saying that there is no default way suggested by the framework itself. Since there is no really default way that works great for everyone, what happens is that a lot of people have come up with third-party packages. So here on the screen you have a bunch of packages that have been developed by the community that deal with this issue. Command localization can be very, very I don't know, well, not complicated, but very specialized to your needs. But for very default needs is only key value and with the detection of the current language of the user. And you can see that developers, they have managed to make a bunch of different packages to deal with this. And yes, I think the framework should propose something that is working great for everyone and that is proposed on the framework, yes. Another thing going on the same area, it's about resources in general, not only strings, localized strings. Colors, dimensions, styles, those kind of resources. Again, I'm really used to having my resources XML files that are really nice. I can put all my dimensions there, my styles, everything there, and I can use them everywhere in my application. So in order to mimic this kind of behavior, what I do in my personal projects is that I build abstract classes for defining, for example, colors, dimensions, and this is how it looks like on code. Oh, you cannot actually see my cursor. That's a shame. Okay. You can see right here on the bottom right, the container with the height, app demands, dot nano size. This is what it would look like on code. And yes, and only the, oh yes, you cannot see, the folder management or the files organizations for those kind of resources. I could use the theming widget, for Flutter, but this is really tied to the material design implementation. And if I want to do something custom, I don't know, I really prefer doing the way that I do, and it works well for me. So yeah, so this is what I do. Other kind of resources I think are really nice, nicely done on Flutter. There's this file called pubspec.yaml. If you want it, it's like the equivalent of our build.gradle files. You have several informations about your external dependencies, have information about your version code, your version name, and you have also those two sessions right here to declare your assets and fonts. So here you can see that for assets, it is, in my opinion, even better the way that you can manage your assets on a Flutter project. Sorry. You can basically do whatever you want to organize your folders. One thing that I really don't like, that I really dislike with drawables in Android is that you cannot do subfolders inside your density dependent folders. And on Flutter, you can do basically whatever you want. You can organize the way that you want. And you can see there, I have on the fourth row a /3.0x, so you can see that I can also take into account the different kinds of densities for my images. And I can put other kinds of assets too, JSON files and others. And on the bottom here, you can see the declaration of the font that I use on the app. Of course, I could have many. I only have one in this case. The name of the family, the path to go to get those font files, regular italic, with the style italic, bold, with a weight to say that this font is bold. So this is quite good for images, general assets, and fonts. So when we are building professional apps, we have to have, of course, the developer mode, we have the production mode, but we need more kind of flavors or build types, whatever you want to call it. And Flutter allows us to have debug, profile, which for testing purposes, and release. Those are the default build flavors or product flavors, build types. And if you want to build any other kind of product flavor, so for example, for testing purposes, for integration, for, I don't know, for whatever you want, even if you have paid versions, any kind of the different flavors of your app, the framework itself does not provide you like a guide in order to do this. This is what I put on the screen here is coming from the official documentation of the Flutter website, the Flutter framework, and they say, okay, do you need to manage other kinds of Flutter, other kinds of flavors on your app? So you can check this blog post, or this blog post. You can see on the last line there are 3 blog posts. Come on, I don't want to have, and they are really long blog posts. And in order to manage those kind of situations, I'm not saying again that it's impossible. I'm not saying that it's blocking us in order to use this framework, but I think the framework could help us create those kind of things too. And it is especially difficult for iOS. Those of you who have some iOS experience know that doing this kind of configuration for iOS can be kind of tricky. Another thing too, again, when you are pushing a professional app to the store, you want to know when your users have unexpected behavior like crashes. In order to do so, one really simple thing to do is to integrate with some kind of crash reporting tools such as Firebase Crashlytics, Sentry.io, or others. I'm very used with the Firebase suite, so I have integrated with Firebase Crashlytics. If you have never integrated this, the default way of integrating is just integrating the dependency and initializing it. If you push your app to production, if your user's app have crashed, you get a report on the console. You can analyze it, fix it, and then publish it again to your users. So this is what I did on my Flutter app. I just integrated the dependency, I initialize it, and then I say, okay, if it crashes, I will get the reports, and then I will fix them. But then one day I get this screen that is on the right hand side here from one user of my app. And then I looked on the console and there was nothing. The thing is that every crash that is occurring in your app is not going to cause your app to crash. So you can see right here, the app has not crashed actually. The app is still open, but in the place where it crashed, it's displayed the error widget, which we call on Flutter world the red screen of death, and with really things that are really information on this widget there that are really useful for development purposes, like the actual error that I had. But this is something that of course you would never have, you should never have in production. So in order to manage this, you have to do 2 things on your code. You have to override the behavior of this widget, the error widget, And then there you can see that I do crashlytics.instance.onError. This is enabling me to send the error to Crashlytics, so I can have it on my console, I can have the details, I can fix it. And then I can actually manage the error myself by displaying a custom message, by displaying some kind of button, or managing the error, whatever you want. So just something to keep in mind. There are things that are weirdly, they are easier to integrate in Flutter apps than in native apps. So this is some animations done in my, my production app. I am using the share menu. You know, when you want to share some kind of content inside your app, you want to share it to other apps on the system. So this is literally just one line of code for it to work in Flutter. So for it to work for iOS and Android at the same time, it works really, really well. And in the same image, we have the quick actions integration, which is, okay, it's not one line of code, but it's maybe 3 lines of code. And you know this action when you long press an icon on the home screen of your app, you have some kind of shortcuts to deep link it to some kind of special screen on your app. This is called quick actions on Flutter. And it's really, really easy also to integrate. Of course, this is because there are existing plugins that manage these integrations. And there are a lot of plugins that work really well that allows us to use them really quickly and integrate a lot of native behavior really quickly inside of Flutter projects. Some other integrations are more hard to do. So let's talk a little bit about a keyboard input. So this on the left here, you have a screenshot of my Android app, and on the right, we have the iOS app. And you can see that I have a bunch of text fields where the user can input text. So I want you to look at the keyboard on the Android, the white one. You can see, and you know this, of course, that even if you don't do any kind of code, the user can always dismiss the keyboard by himself or herself. There's always a back button that is present, or a dismiss button that is present. And now I want you to look to the gray keyboard right there. You can see there is the iOS numeric keyboard. You can see that I have the numbers, I have a delete button, and that's it. And you know that iOS devices, they don't have a physical back button. So this screenshot right there, my user is stuck. He has to quit the app in order to actually dismiss the keyboard. So there are actually plugins that allows us to display, you know, you can display an accessory view above the keyboard. If you use iOS devices, you may have seen them already. They can display stuff like cancel, done, stuff like that. They can actually dismiss the keyboard. So just something to keep in mind too. Another feedback that I have too that I wanted to share is that a lot of people, when they first start building Flutter apps, they want to build, I don't know, Hacker News app, something like that, that will show a list of items, and then you click on one and you get to the details. And when they build the list, they tested on the latest Pixel 4 device that works really, really nice. There is the top of the line on the market, and they test on it. They scroll, and it's really janky. It's really slow, and they look at it and they say, "Oh my God, this is so slow. Flutter is horrible. I'll never try it again. Let's stick with native development." What this developer didn't know is that he was in developer mode. He was in debug mode. And Flutter actually has two kinds, not Flutter, but Dart, the programming language that is used to build the Flutter apps, has two kinds of compilations, the just-in-time and the ahead-of-time. Just-in-time is optimized for development. So the development process can be really quick. You can make small fixes, you can make tweaks on your design and see your changes almost in real time. This is what we call a hot reload or hot restart in Flutter. So this is for development, the debug mode, the just-in-time compilation of Dart. But of course, when you're going to publish it to your users, to your final users, you're going to have to compile it in an optimized way for the hardware. So you're going to use the ahead of time compilation. So this one takes a little bit more time, but it is going to be optimized for the architecture of the machine. And I said, I didn't say it, but I hope you understood that the just-in-time compilation, it's really, really fast for us to make little changes and build new versions, but the app is not going to be optimized. Another thing that is really interesting too in Flutter is the way that you build your layout. Maybe if you already saw the way that Jetpack Compose works, it kind of works in the same way. In Flutter, we talk about widgets, which are basically the views, other stuff too, but here for this example, those are views. And you can see right here on this example, I have a widget that is showing a text that has some padding, and the text widget itself is centered. If we were doing the classic Android development, we will have the text view with some property for center and some properties for padding. So you can see that this is not how it works on Flutter. Every widget is ultra specialized in what it does. A text widget is specialized on displaying text. It displays a string, it can deal with some styling for the text, it can deal with text alignment, everything that is related to text. If you want to center it, it is not this widget that is going to take care of it. You have to wrap it on a center widget. And if you want to add some padding, again, it's not the text widget, it is not the center widget, you have to wrap it on this padding widget. This can be kind of weird when you're first starting Flutter, but it can be extremely useful when you're reusing widgets. You're not like making special versions of your view, making it inherit for a basic view and then doing some kind of special behavior. No, you're composing your widgets, and it's really, really useful for reuse of the code. So I wanted to conclude with this slide, and you can see on the left what I think is good, on the right where there's some room for improvement on from what I have observed. You can see on the good side, those that are in gray. I didn't have time today to talk about those, but I can. You can ask me questions if you want, or you can. I have a longer version of this talk in which I talk about those. So yeah, so material design integrations, some kinds of easy integrations thanks to plugins, the declarative UI, composability, the modes. Of course, also the Flutter community is also really great, and the experience provided by the framework itself too. But a lot of stuff have also some room for improvement. So some final thoughts. Flutter is awesome. Android native dev is awesome. iOS native dev is awesome too. I don't think Flutter will entirely replace native development. So if you have one message to take into account today, is just keep an open mind, look into it. It is Flutter is using declarative programming, which is also used by SwiftUI in Jetpack Compose, but it is actually stable. You can actually use it and publish production apps. So if you want to get used to it, just you can use whenever you want to build an application. It is ready for you to use, and I really, really encourage you to look into it. So these are the apps that I have built. They are all available on GitHub. Some of them are available on Google Play, on the App Store, so you can check them out. And this was it for me. So thanks for listening. Now Let's see if this works. Cool. Okay, so let's go to the questions. I can start answering, right? So yes, so let's just do it, because I don't see a question highlighted, but yes, can you mix, I'll just start from the top. Can you mix Flutter and Kotlin in the same project? Is it interoperable? And if yes, how to deal with this different way of using resources? You can definitely mix in those on the same project. A Flutter project has three folders. Has the lib folder where you have all your Dart code, and it generates the native Android project and the native iOS project that you pick in which language they are going to be built, either in Java or Kotlin for Android, and in Swift or Objective-C for iOS. And you can totally make them communicate. You can make your Flutter part of your app communicate with the native apps. Those are called platform channels. If you saw on the example of the apps that I have made, the one with the clock is using those. So you can check them out. We call them platform channels or method channels. So there are definitely, yes, there are strategies of dealing with the communication between the two parts. So if yes, how to deal with this different way of using resources? I think you're meaning the strings and the styles and dimensions and stuff like that. If you are using platform channel, so if you're actually writing code on your native side, I really encourage you to only do resource management on the Flutter side. You still have your resources files on your Android side. If you want to do some specific code that is only running on Android, maybe you could only create resources that are specific to Android, and you can call it. It is a classic Android project. You can do whatever you want with this. The same for iOS. So yes, you can deal with it because it's a real Android project. So let's go to the next one. Can we use Flutter widgets in our apps as a library? Is it compatible with Android SDK? Yes, you can create a Flutter module and use it as a library on your Android app. I really encourage you to watch Salih's talk from yesterday. I think the replay is already available. He's talking about that. So you can actually build screens, full screens, yes, you can also build part of the screen that is a Flutter widget, and build it as a library or integrate it directly on your code. I really encourage you to look at his talk, and it's stable. You can use it from today. There are some caveats still, but it is working. I have tested it also, and it's working great. So next question, can you configure the AOT or GIT compilation modes? No, it is automatic. The compilation modes are automatic. The GIT mode is specific to debug. The AOT is specific for release. So yes, it's automatic. A path of vines and flowers. Is there some hidden meaning on this talk's title? No. It is just, I didn't want to put like the good points and the bad points of Flutter. I wanted to give something more, I don't know, not poetic, but different. And yes, just it is actually, I have changed actually the title of this talk. I just think it's better, is what you have experienced on the path. You see beautiful things as flowers, but you have some obstacles too. You have some kind of vines that are blocking your way. I don't know. So this is why I have chose this title. Can I keep going on, because it's 30 minutes, but it is the the break right now, so I guess we can keep going on. Please, admin, say it to me. Say on the general chat. Well, I'll keep going on. I see. Okay, awesome. So let's keep going. And so let's do the Crashlytics one. Crashlytics.onError. Is it something only doable in Flutter? Is there a particular reason why you highlight this behavior? This is automatic when your app crashes on native Android. You don't have to do it. This, I don't know if it answers the question, but this is, if you don't put this this line of code, you will never have your crashes that are reported. But of course, you can always do it on your Android native app if you want to report some kind of weird behavior that hasn't led to a crash of the app. But just so you know, the difference with Flutter is that they really rarely will crash. If your Flutter app has crashed, it is actually the framework itself that has crashed. So yes, this is the only thing that is particular to Flutter. The Flutter actually, it catches all of the weird behaviors of your app, such as the one that I showed to you. So the dismiss keyboard on iOS isn't handled with gesture on their platform. Yes, very good questions, because now they have gestures. Maybe it is. I have to test it. I actually have an iOS device. Dismissing keyboards. Maybe someone on the chat can ask the question if they are familiar with iOS. Maybe they will, but with older devices, I don't think it works. Maybe it's iOS 13 thing. I don't know. Anyways, on my testing device, I was completely stuck. So GIT versus AOT, you use both. In which cases, it is automatic. Again, it is automatic debug or release. You don't have to think about those. You just have to say when you're doing the debug version, it is not going to be optimized. When you're doing a release, Flutter release, is going to use the AOT compilation. Any experience on our device on mixing Kotlin multi-platform and Flutter? Excellent question. I have some friends actually that have, some colleagues that have experience with those, and they have some really promising results. I can, how do I publish those? I don't know if I can. I will never find it right now, but there is actually a project that is managing a Kotlin multi-platform and Flutter. It's a really nice experiment, and they can work together. So any issues for app size with Flutter and Kotlin JavaScript projects? App size, yes, there were some people saying that Flutter apps in general, they were a little bit bigger than the native apps because it has the whole framework itself inside of the app. But it's not something that it's really out of your mind. It's maybe, I don't know, 4 megabytes or something like that, but yes, you have to test in order to see what kind of size you're getting with your Flutter app. But it's completely acceptable in my opinion. I think my apps maybe have, I don't know, 20 or 30 megabytes, and the one that is really big, the one that is really small, maybe it's 5 megabytes or 6 megabytes. So I think it's acceptable. Wow, where you can find my longer talk? Oh, I'll post it on my Twitter, the link. So yes, keep that in mind. Do you recommend buying iOS and Android devices to test Flutter to production apps? You can test it on a simulators for iOS and on emulators for Android. It is always better to test on physical devices. If you don't have a Mac, you would not be able to build the iOS version. So this is also something that is really important. You have to have a Mac in order to build for iOS. My recommendation, if you're publishing it to the stores, always test on a real device. But for the development process, maybe simulators and emulators are enough. So what would be the ideal way to build apps for fairly large organizations which has multiple modules? We're stuck like Gradle, yes, for the build process. So yes, you can also build modules in Flutter. I actually don't have much experience with that, so I cannot say, but very nice. Very nice question. I actually don't know if yes, how the building process would go for multi-module Flutter apps. Very nice question. I have to check it. My experience with Flutter internationalization, which libraries have worked best for you. So what I have done is that I don't use any. I am actually using Dart extensions. You know, the same way that you can use Kotlin extensions, that you can they also exist in Dart. To manage it, I basically have dictionaries for my strings. I have files for English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And then I load them. I detect the locale of the user and I load them. It's working really well for me. It's a really lightweight version. But yeah, I'm still waiting for a better solution from the framework. Any thoughts about Flutter accessibility integration? Excellent question. You can totally take into account accessibility. It's working well on Flutter. Flutter has been built with testability and accessibility in mind. So I really encourage you to watch a talk from Flutter Europe that it's on accessibility. It was really good. So I think we're done. So thanks again for joining me. And I hope you have a nice break. And again, if you have any other questions, you can follow up here. You can book office hours or Twitter or wherever I'm joinable. So thanks again and have a nice break, everyone.